Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with another Dinosaur Bucket. Yes, we've got a brand new bucket that I was just able to acquire, and this one is actually from Wild Republic. Let's hold the tag, Andy. Wild Republic, if you are familiar with them, I had recently reviewed some super cool plush figures from them. Well, they also have all sorts of other stuff out, including, again, this Dino Bucket. And we can see there are 23 pieces in here, so I'm pretty excited to see what all we have inside. I will also say, when it comes to dinosaur buckets, the actual artwork on this is far and away some of the nicest I have ever seen on a dinosaur bucket. We have a really cool, nice, shiny, almost like a metallic sort of a look to it, which looks really cool. We've got a very cool skull. If we lead over here to the side, you've got a dinosaur walking along. As we continue to lead along, basically a whole lot of vegetation, and then as you move over to the other side, you now have a Triceratops over here with a baby Triceratops, actually, and then we basically lead back around to the front. But it is really nicely done. Like, it's such a nice bucket, it would be hard to actually keep the toys and get rid of the bucket, because the bucket overall sports some beautiful artwork on it. But we're going to go ahead, pop this open, and we'll bring all of the figures in and see what we've got contained within. So we've popped the lid open, and instantly you are met with that strong smell of rubber, which is something that's pretty common when it comes to dinosaur buckets. And I can already see a Brachiosaurus kind of jumping here out of the bucket, and we can see we've got ourselves a pretty interesting take on a Brachiosaurus as you move through. I will say the detail on that is actually really well done. Definitely has some nice, highly detailed skin texture. We have a very bright green for the body color of this one, and then a dark, very dark brown moving down along the back, and you also have blue eyes. We can see the inside of the mouth has like the teeth and stuff in there. I mean, it's obviously not the greatest Brachiosaurus in the world, but for what it is, it's a pretty fun figure, having kind of like a vintage look to it with the tail so low to the ground, which I actually do quite like. Now, after re-examining that, I definitely like the old school sort of feel of that Brachiosaur, so I love vintage dinosaurs. We also have a Triceratops in here, which we can see. Very cool bluish color, which is actually kind of convenient because the plush version of their Triceratops was also blue. We basically just have a blue and then a lighter tone for the underside and a black for the eyes. And overall, the skin texture looks okay on the Triceratops. Again, it's got a little bit of a curve to the tail, not a massive curve. And the detailing, again, looks pretty decent throughout the course of the body of the Triceratops. That would actually be a fun one to repaint, because the detail looks pretty crisp on that figure. We also have a super old school looking version of a raptor. How absolutely awesome is this figure? I love this thing. You can see we've got like a brown for the primary body color, a lighter tone for the underside, and that lighter tone also extends down into the feet. We can see those nice sickle claws there. You've got some pretty decent skin texture throughout the course of the figure. The mouth is slightly open, but it's one solid material on the inside of the mouth where you can kind of see the teeth. I think a repaint would definitely benefit this one as well. But again, look at how cool that is with the super old school tripod pose and everything. Like, that is about as vintage of a raptor as it gets. That is super, super cool. And again, you know, I'm a little biased because I love old school dinosaurs, but that's just the way it is. We do also have this little, I guess this would be like a Brontosaurus, maybe, kind of still has like almost a Brachiosaurus looking head sculpt. But again, another tail dragger, which I do also like. Again, nice bluish tones for this one with a lighter tone on the underside. Some fairly decent texturing and stuff throughout. You've got the eyes painted again with the black, so that's a pretty cool old school style sauropod. There is also a Stegosaurus in here. We can see a red Stegosaurus. Definitely, again, a little bit of a vintage look for this one. Some decent looking skin texture. You've got a red and then a lighter tone, a white for the underbelly, and then black eyes for the figure. But again, obviously, it's got like that sort of vintage, older look to it compared to what we see nowadays. Very like low lying to the ground. The tail's kind of down. You even got like a little slump to the neck as it leads down. Very reptilian, again, old school style Stegosaurus. We also have, if I can pull another one out over here, we've got ourselves a super cool old school theropod. I think this one would be like a megalosaurus or an allosaurus or something like that, but I love this figure. I definitely have seen this one before, and it has that very cool old school charm, which it seems like a lot of the figures in this bucket really do. We've got a nice greenish tone and then a lighter tone for the underbelly. Again, not a whole lot when it comes to variation of color in these figures, but I never really expect a whole lot of variation of color. But you've got some decent detailing, again, decent skin texture throughout. You've got the black for the eyes. We can see the teeth and everything on the inside of the mouth are sculpted out, just no real paintwork or anything in there. But when it comes to an old school vintage dinosaur, an old school like vintage theropod, that is a really, really cool figure. There's also a larger ceratopsian in here. This one does have a little bit more coloration to it. As you can see, we have like a mixture of lighter and darker shades of brown. Kind of looks like we've had this, painted up with like a wash. You have a little bit of a glossy black for the eyes as well. And again, when it comes to the detailing standpoint, like that is definitely a fairly decent looking figure when it comes to the fine detail overall, and I think the paintwork of this one has definitely done a better job of bringing the detail out pretty nicely overall for that figure. So that's a pretty nice one, I would say, as far as the figures in this set go. That's probably the nicest one so far, and I believe I have seen that figure in the past. We've also got a really small, definitely, again, very vintage style Stegosaurus in here, which we can see with a yellow on the underside, a green for the upper side. Very, again, low-lying to the ground, sort of vintage style Stego. We also have some other stuff in here. So we've got some Vegetation, which we can see with kind of like a dinosaur, prehistoric sort of a look for sure when it comes to those trees. These trees always in these buckets end up getting a little bit warped, so they're hard to like get to stand at first. They tend to lean. There we go, we got that one up. There's also a rocky sort of mountainous foundation here. There's also like some pegs sticking up on it. I don't know if that means that there's some sort of vegetation that we can apply to that. But there's again another one, which we can see. These would actually be pretty fun for display purposes, or even if you were to create a diorama. I'm actually going to move the camera down a little bit so we can get a better look at everything that we have so far. And then there's another tree in here, which we can see right there. And another tree. So we've got two more trees in here. Definitely some nice vegetation overall, which I actually quite like. And then another one, so definitely filling up with some nice trees throughout. And then there's another one of these vintage dinosaurs, but this one is definitely an old school T-Rex, and actually, again, a really nice looking one. There we go, focus, there you go. You can definitely see a nice looking old school style T-Rex, though I will say the eye has missed the mark by a mile. It's actually up here, which is pretty funny. The eyes still also missed the mark, but a little bit better over here. I absolutely want to repaint this one. I think I'm going to at some point, because when it comes to capturing the charm of a vintage T-Rex, that's very cool looking. We've got a few more in here. Not a whole lot left, I would say, if I can get a hold of any. So we've got a little Ankylosaurus. Again, another really small minifigure version of an Ankylosaurus with a purplish tone on the back, yellow here for the underside. And then there is a very small Triceratops, which is also actually quite nice. Another very cool looking mini when it comes to these little figures. And now I just hit that raptor in the face. Love that all these theropods have that old school look to them. There is as well a Styracosaurus, a pretty interesting looking Styracosaurus with some ferocious looking teeth on it with some nice orange and yellowish tones, but that one is actually pretty cool. I don't think I've ever seen that figure before. As well as a very small Pteranodon, which we can see. Focus camera. A little bit of a goofy looking Pteranodon, but again, another old school figure. And that one has like the vintage toy charm to it. Like it really looks like a lot of the toy Pteranodons I had played with when I was a kid. And the last few figures that we have, first of all, we've got a sauropod in here, and this one has the nice neck turn to it. Again, the tail down on the ground with the tail dragging, and overall, I've seen many older illustrations of sauropods with this sort of a look. Again, I could just imagine this one being portrayed in like a swamp or something, and then the head turning around with like an Allosaurus or something off in the background, just kind of painting a picture that would work nicely with that. And then there's also this sort of T-Rex figure in here. I think I've seen this one before. It looks very familiar to me, but I can't quite pinpoint where I've seen this one before. But it's got a really bright red eye and a very dark greenish tone with some black striping moving along the body. Not quite the old school look for this one, but kind of an old school look at the same time, sort of. But I definitely like the other dinos as far as the theropods a little bit more than that one. So that really about does it. I don't think we need to do much in the way of, like, comparisons or sizes or anything like that. Obviously, if it's a dinosaur bucket, they're fairly small figures overall, and you can see, again, this one is filled with a lot of vintage charm, which is one of the advantages of different dinosaur buckets, I think. You end up often with a lot of old school style dinosaur toys, and if you are like me, especially if you were born in the 80s like I was, like, I feel like you'll really, and of course even before that, you'll really appreciate that old school style of tail dragging tripod poses and stuff. Like, I just love that stuff because it's what I grew up on, and these are probably some of the coolest looking versions of those dinosaurs that I've seen. But again, if you are interested in this bucket, I will include a link in the description to where you can head on over to Amazon and grab it right now for yourself. So make sure you do that, and of course, like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.